Hi, welcome back to Grains in Small Places. My name's Kara and my channel is dedicated to fresh milled flour and all the things, the tips, the tricks, the recipes, and everything else that goes with that. But today I really wanted to talk about and share some of the ways that you can work fresh milled flour into your busy schedule and your daily life, no matter what kind of lifestyle you have. So let's get started. So I get questions all the time about how you can make something ahead of time and then bake it later, or things that you can do so that you're not always trying to make something every single day, but you still want to eat fresh milled flour every single day. So there's a lot of tricks that I have learned over the years working with fresh milled flour of things that we like to do in order to preserve the peak freshness of your fresh milled flour baked goods, and also how you can work it into your schedule. Some people are morning people, some people are night people. You have morning people can get up and they can make their baked goods in the morning time and then have everything ready to go. But sometimes, even if you're a morning person, you have young children, you don't want to be using the mill, or you're a night person like I am, and I don't really like to get up really early to bake things. So one of my favorite things to do with almost all of my yeast bread recipes, like my pizza dough, my breads, my rolls, my sandwich buns, I've done it with probably almost every single one of my yeast doughs. And I will make it in bread form, I will make it in bun form, I will make it in sandwich form, whatever it may be. And I like to stay up the night before, and you don't have to stay up late. You could do it in the middle of the afternoon, pretty much any time that you have extra time available, you can make the dough. So what I like to do is choose whatever recipe that you're wanting to make it with. It probably will work with other people's recipes as well. I haven't tried those, but most likely it will work with other fresh milled flour recipes as well as my recipes. So I like to make the dough exactly how the recipe says, and then let it do their first rise, and then punch it down and then shape it. So whether you're making a bread loaf and you're shaping that, or you're making rolls and you're shaping those, I will put them on either parchment paper lined baking pan or whatever pan I plan on baking them in the next day. And then I will cover it and put it in the refrigerator. And I will do this before the second rise. So this question gets asked to me a lot. And I wanted to go ahead and just make a video of how we could talk about all of these things. So once it goes in the refrigerator, I have left it in the refrigerator for overnight, also 2 days, and up to 3 days without an issue. Every day that you take it, you may get a slightly less rise when you go to do the second rise, but I find that up to 3 days in the refrigerator, so let's say you make it, you plan on having it the next day, something comes up and you end up not being able to make it. Well, you don't have to throw it away. You can keep it in the refrigerator covered still and then bake it the next day. So what you want to do to bake those is take them out of the refrigerator, let them sit on the counter for about an hour or two to come to room temperature. They should have a little bit of rise in them. This is like their second rise. And then you'll preheat your oven and then bake them as directed. And this should still have a little bit of rise in the oven. So if they're not fully doubled or anything like that, that's okay. You can bake them and they'll still have some rise. So that is one of my absolute favorite tricks of how to work fresh milled flour into my daily lifestyle. Also making sure that I'm having something fresh when I want to eat it, because in the past, before I figured this out, we would make the buns and then maybe eat them the next day. And then of course, if you meet them the next day, they're always slightly more stale. So I like to have them fresh for the day that we want to enjoy them. So I love this method with pretty much every, like I said, yeast dough. I do have some sourdough recipes, which this is kind of like opposite way of thinking as with white flour sourdough, but oftentimes sourdough with fresh milled flour ferments so much faster than white flour. It almost always will over ferment in the refrigerator. Like if you leave that in it overnight or 2 or 3 days like I do the yeast, I find that it just over ferments and then you'll end up with it just like having no strength. It will kind of fall flat, be a hockey puck or a loose pancake or something like that. So this is mostly kind of for yeast doughs. But I do have some tips and tricks and how to work with fresh milled flour in sourdough. I will try to make sure to link that down below. Maybe I'll put a card up here or here to showing you my fresh milled flour sourdough bread recipe. I have a whole bunch of other recipes with sourdough as well, but I also do yeast bread recipes with fresh milk flour. So I don't specialize in one or the other. I don't only do one or the other. I end up bouncing back and forth. So I love doing that and having a huge variety and a huge choice of doughs that we can make. So the next tip I have is the freezer is your best friend. With fresh milk flour, it's something, a resource that I highly recommend using. And so anytime I'm making, let's say, pizza dough, I will make my pizza dough. I will double or triple my pizza dough batch, and then I will put some of it in the refrigerator, because pizza dough always tastes better when you ferment it in the refrigerator, the yeast pizza dough, overnight or 2 nights, and then make your pizza. It just amplifies the flavor, the texture, everything is just pretty awesome. So if you've never tried it and you've always made your pizza dough the same day that you've made your pizza, I recommend giving that a try. And then you can also put half of that dough in the freezer, or a third of that dough in the freezer, depending on how much you make. And then you can pull that dough out of the freezer. You're going to do it the same way. You're going to make the dough, let it rise, punch it down, and then divide it up into your fridge, freezer, fresh, accordingly, however you plan on making it. But using that freezer, then I can make the pizza dough one time, and then I have multiple meals of pizza or anything else that we can have later with only having to make that dough one time. And I have so many different recipe ideas that you can make with my pizza dough recipe. I have a couple videos. I have like my cheesy garlic pull apart bread, my focaccia. I have a whole video on like game day snacks where you can make little snacks out of that pizza dough and how to do it. I have how you can make your own frozen pizzas, so you have those in the freezer ready to go. I have videos on all of those things, so make sure to check those out. I will try to remember my hardest to link those down in the description box below as well. Another great tip with that freezer is I love to make our cookie dough, like specifically the brown butter chocolate chip cookie doughs, the snickerdoodles. I have a whole bunch of cookie recipes, but those are like the two I find myself making, and the sugar cookies often, and putting them in the freezer. And so what we'll do with those is, if I'm only making some for my family, we'll make the cookie dough, we'll bake off like 8 or so, enjoy those for the next day or two, and then we'll scoop all the cookie doughs onto a baking tray with parchment paper, and they can be right next to each other because you're going to pop them in the freezer. So they can be right next to each other. You fill that whole tray with your cookie dough balls, put it in the freezer for about an hour or two, and then they'll get solid. And then you can take those and put those in a like freezer safe bag or freezer safe container, and then you'll have cookie dough balls that you can pull out and bake. You can bake them from frozen, but sometimes they don't flatten as much, so we will let them fall a little bit, or I'll put them in while the oven preheats a little bit and then take some time off. So just check and see the texture of the cookie that your family prefers. We like ours a little bit of like gooey, so we'll underbake ours on purpose sometimes. Pizza dough. I also have cookie balls. But having extra cookie dough on hand is always great, because you can pull out 2 cookies if you want and bake them, and they will be nice, fresh baked cookies. Of course, you could always make the same cookies fully and then freeze them once they've been baked as well, but we like having the option to be able to just pull a couple out, bake them, and have fresh baked cookies whenever we want. Which leads me into another great way to use your freezer for your hard work that you've done. So one of my favorite ways to use my freezer for bread or baked goods that I've already made is I will bake them off, let them cool, and then if it's a loaf of bread, we'll slice it. If it's buns, we'll slice those. Bagels, we'll slice them, whatever, so that they're easy to use. Like once they're frozen, they're hard to get apart. So we will slice that the same day, and then to lock in that freshness, so you have like the freshest preserved bread without preservatives, and then we'll put it in a freezer safe container or a freezer safe bag and put it in the freezer. So you want to make sure you're using freezer safe so that you have the thicker lined, either you're using the bags or glass or whatever you choose, because if you're using just a regular Ziploc bag, they can get stale in the freezer. So you want to make sure that you're using something that is going to freeze it better, to preserve it, so that you don't get the freezer burn or taste or anything like that. So we have not had that issue. I try to make sure that we're rotating through the things in our freezer. I try not to leave anything in there longer than like 3 months or so. That way that it still has that same fresh baked taste when we go to thaw it out. So when I have something in the freezer, we'll just pull it. If we want to use it, we can, since we've already sliced our bread, we could choose to have 1 or 2 pieces of toast or 1 or 2 rolls or sandwich buns, and I can make a whole big batch at once, but only enjoy 1 or 2, 3 or 4 at a time. We can pull those out of the freezer, let them sit on the counter to come to room temperature, and then we can enjoy them, and that locks in that freshness. So I think one mistake, a lot of times people don't want to use their freezer because they think it'll stale the bread. But oftentimes that's because they'll wait 3 or 4 days till the bread itself is starting to get stale on the counter, and then you'll freeze them. Well, if you do that, you're freezing in the stale bread. So make sure that you're freezing it when it's at the optimal freshness. So that's locking that in for you, because like we used to do it that way and never really wanted the frozen bread because it was like, well, this is stale. Well, it was stale because we were freezing it once it was already stale. The freezer, then I have the bagels. So we like to keep that freshness in by going ahead and popping it in the freezer the same day they were baked. Of course, you can enjoy whatever you want the day that you baked it. Whatever's left, put it in the freezer. We found that that also gets us always having days that like we don't feel like baking, or we're really busy, or have a bunch of plans. I can still grab fresh milk flour baked goods out of our freezer and we can enjoy those. So that is very handy to have. So I hope this video was helpful to you, how to kind of work it into your everyday life. I think the next video I'm gonna go ahead and put out will be like how you can use stale bread in case you accidentally left it out and it got stale, or imperfect bread, or like the bread ends. I have a daughter that likes the bread ends, but if you do not have anybody that likes the ends, you can always use that for the methods also. So I think I'm gonna make a video for that coming up next, so make sure you're subscribed to watch out for that video, where I'm gonna just talk about how you can use all of those leftover bread products and some, you know, interesting ways to move through those without wasting and to boost nutrition into your food. So make sure to watch out for that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below if you have any questions. I always try to answer questions the best of my abilities. And if you're interested in milling your own grains and finding some recipes to start out with, don't forget to check out my blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net. You can find all my recipes there. I also have a cookbook as well. I'll link that down below. So thanks for stopping by Grains and Small Places. Goodbye.